Welcome to the entire story of the Black Plague. Bedtime history. Tonight on Methoria, we drift into the shadows of the past, to a time when silence fell heavy across villages and the toll of church bells marked more endings than beginnings. The Black Plague was not just an illness. It was a storm that swept through Europe, reshaping lives, faith, and the very fabric of society. As you listen, let the story move slowly, like candlelight flickering in a quiet room. We will walk gently through fields once abandoned, streets once emptied, and hearts once shaken, not to stir fear, but to reflect softly on endurance, memory, and the fragility of life. Now, let us begin. The entire story of the Black Plague. Bedtime history. The entire story of the Black Plague. You drift into the stillness of medieval Europe, where villages breathe in rhythm with the seasons. Life is fragile, yet familiar, as people trust the land and prayer to hold them. Beneath this quiet surface, unseen forces begin to stir. You close your eyes and let your mind drift backward in time into the heart of medieval Europe. The year is not important. It could be the early 1300s, when life moves slowly, shaped by the rhythm of the seasons. Villages are small, clustered around a church whose bells mark the hours. Fields stretch outward, planted with wheat, barley, and rye. Farmers bend to the soil with aching backs, their hands rough and worn, but their hearts tied closely to the land that feeds them. For most people, the world does not extend far beyond the horizon of their village. Travel is rare, knowledge is limited, and daily survival is an accomplishment. You breathe into this world. There are no engines, no electricity, no rush of machines. Only the sound of animals in the barns, the soft chatter of neighbors at the well, and the tolling of church bells at dawn and dusk. Life is fragile, yet familiar. People turn to prayer, trusting the saints to protect them. Illness is not unknown, but it is part of life. Children fall ill, women die in childbirth, fevers come and go. Yet through it all, there's a sense of continuity. Life, death, and faith form a circle that feels steady and unbreakable. Imagine yourself walking through one of these villages. The houses are simple, made of wood and stone, their thatched roofs leaning under years of weather. Smoke curls from chimneys as stews simmer in clay pots. Children play in the dirt roads, their laughter carrying in the cool air. Old men sit on benches, telling stories of wars and famines long past. Stories that always end with the same message. The world is difficult, but it continues. That is enough. That is all they know. Yet beneath this ordinary rhythm, something stirs. Far beyond these fields and forests, across mountains and seas, trade routes stretch like veins connecting distant lands. Merchants travel along the Silk Road, carrying silks, spices, and precious stones. Ships cross the Mediterranean, their wooden hulls creaking under the weight of cargo. The world is more connected than villagers can imagine, and with every connection comes risk. Invisible threads bind Europe to Asia, and with them come unseen dangers. Still, in this moment before the storm, no one can sense what is coming. Priests speak of salvation and damnation, but not of invisible enemies. Doctors, limited in their knowledge, rely on herbs, bloodletting, and prayer. People understand the body through the balance of humors, believing sickness arises when one fluid overwhelms another. To them, disease is a punishment or a misfortune, never a mystery to be solved. You breathe deeper, letting the calm of this world surround you. The stillness feels almost comforting, an illusion of safety built on habit and faith. But illusions do not last forever. The air itself carries secrets, and the quiet is only the pause before the breaking of a storm. And so you wonder, if you lived in this time, would you have noticed the signs? Would you have felt the tremor beneath the soil of daily life? Or would you, like everyone else, have trusted in prayer and routine, never suspecting that an invisible tide was already rising far away, a tide that would soon sweep across the land and change everything? The night grows still. The bells of the village toll softly in your imagination, echoing across the fields. You feel the hush, the fragile balance of life before the unknown, and you sense that something vast and unstoppable is already on its way. The first whispers of death from the east. Trade routes carry more than silk and spices. Ships arrive with hidden passengers, rats and their silent fleas. Illness begins as a murmur in distant towns, then grows into a haunting echo that no wall or prayer can keep away. You breathe into the quiet of medieval nights, and far away, beyond the safety of the village, a different story begins to unfold. Along the long, dusty roads of trade, caravans move like slow rivers of humanity, carrying silks, spices, and secrets. Ships drift across the Black Sea, their sails heavy with the winds of change. With every merchant's bag and every crate unloaded onto a dock, unseen passengers travel silently, rats, their fur coarse and their eyes gleaming in the shadows. Upon their backs and bellies, tiny fleas cling, creatures too small to notice, yet powerful enough to alter the course of the world. At first, the illness is little more than a whisper. A town in the east grows restless as rumors of fever spread. In a port city, a few sailors fall sick with strange swellings beneath their arms and between their legs. They sweat, they tremble, and they fade quickly. But sailors are often sick, and ports are noisy, transient places. The deaths do not yet seem unusual. Life continues. Ships load and unload, bells ring in the marketplaces, and traders haggle as though the world is unshaken. Yet you sense how the whisper gathers strength. A single ship can carry more than spices. It can carry the seeds of devastation. Wooden beams creak, rats scurry unseen, and fleas leap from fur to skin, feeding, biting, infecting. In the dark holds of ships, disease festers quietly, invisible, waiting only for arrival in crowded harbors to release its power. Imagine yourself walking along the docks of Constantinople or the narrow streets of Kaffa on the Crimean coast. Merchants shout in many tongues, the smell of fish and tar lingers in the air, and soldiers keep watch. Among them, a sickness begins to take hold. No one understands its origin. Some say it comes from poisoned air, a miasma drifting in from the east. Others whisper of divine punishment, of sin so heavy that heaven itself bends low to strike. People do not see fleas or rats. They see fate, mystery, and fear. The whispers move faster than footsteps. As traders leave port, they carry stories with them. Tales of sudden death travel as swiftly as the cargo on their backs. A village far inland hears of a distant sickness, but shrugs it away. It seems far off, like thunder on the edge of the sky. Yet thunder always moves closer, and so the pattern unfolds. Rats thrive where humans live, in grain stores and stables, in kitchens and on ships. Fleas bite and infect. Within days, the sickness claims its victims. Within weeks, whole households are silenced. The whisper becomes an echo, carried across lands and waters. You imagine lying in bed, hearing those rumors for the first time. Would you believe them? Or would you, like many, dismiss them as tales exaggerated by frightened travelers? When life depends on routine and survival, it is easier to turn away from fear, to hope that the sickness is only a story. But the truth has already begun its journey. And so the world breathes uneasily. A merchant coughs into his sleeve, a sailor collapses onto the dock. A village elder begins to bury more bodies than he remembers in his youth. Still, the bells of the church ring, the fields are plowed, and the markets stay open. Life clings stubbornly to its rhythm, unwilling to admit how fragile it has become. But you feel it now. the whisper turning into a murmur, the murmur swelling into a roar. The sickness that begins in silence is moving outward, unstoppable. And as the echo grows louder, you cannot help but wonder, when the whisper reaches the heart of Europe, will anyone be able to escape its sound? The plague arrives. You see streets turn still as bells toll endlessly. Fever burns, swellings rise, and fear spreads faster than the sickness itself. Families close doors, neighbors vanish, and silence falls heavier than any storm. Yet the question lingers. Why now? And why here? The whisper has traveled far, and now it reaches the heart of Europe. You find yourself in a bustling town, narrow cobblestone streets, crowded markets, and the smell of bread fresh from the ovens. People go about their lives as they always have, unaware that the invisible tide has already entered their gates. It begins quietly. A single house where a child grows feverish. A sailor who collapses after docking his ship. At first, neighbors mutter about bad air or curses, but they do not yet sense the enormity. Death has always been near in these times. Wars, famines, childbirth, and fevers take life often. Yet soon the deaths multiply. Bells toll one after another, not for festivals or weddings, but for funerals, and the sound does not stop. You breathe into this moment. Imagine the air heavy with dread. The illness takes shape in terrible ways. Dark swellings, called buboes, rising beneath the arms and around the groin, burning with pain. The fever rises so quickly that a person healthy in the morning may lie still by nightfall. Families shut their doors, hoping to block the sickness out, but the plague seeps through wood and stone, carried by rats in the walls and fleas in the straw. The streets grow still. Merchants no longer shout in the marketplaces. Instead, carts roll slowly, carrying the lifeless to mass graves. Priests walk with incense, the smoke drifting upward as though trying to carry prayers to heaven. Yet the prayers feel unanswered. Day by day the city empties, and silence takes hold more firmly than ever before. You see how fear spreads faster than the illness itself. Neighbors avoid one another, friendships unravel, and even families fracture. Mothers turn away from sick children, husbands from wives, desperate to save themselves. No one knows how the disease moves, only that it moves relentlessly. Some blame the air, others the water, and still others whisper of punishment from God. There are no explanations that bring comfort, only questions without answers. And yet, in this despair, you notice the small details. The candles still burning in windows, the bells that continue to toll, the faint sound of a lute played by someone clinging to normal life. Humanity does not vanish, even in darkness. People still hope, still love, still try to remember joy, though it is fleeting. The plague moves from city to city like a shadow. In Florence, it cuts the population in half. In Paris, it spreads through crowded streets until the Seine itself seems to carry grief. In London, the tolling of church bells becomes a constant, so steady it feels like a heartbeat of sorrow. The pattern is always the same: fever, swelling, silence. The sick die within days, the healthy fear their own turn. No wall, no gate, no prayer keeps the sickness away for long. You imagine lying in bed at night, listening to the sounds outside. No longer laughter or footsteps, but the creak of carts and the cries of mourners. You feel the weight of not knowing whether tomorrow will come. Would you flee to the countryside as some try to do? Or would you remain in your home, waiting, hoping, fearing? The world has changed. In just months, what was once a whisper has become an unrelenting storm. The plague is no longer a rumor carried on trade winds. It is here, among the people, reshaping every corner of life. And as you listen to the silence of the empty streets, you cannot help but wonder, how do hearts hold on to hope when death walks so closely beside them? Faith, fear, and desperation. In candlelit chapels, prayers rise like smoke, but answers do not come. Some turn to penance, others to blame, and many to hopeless wandering. You sense a world searching for meaning as if darkness itself has taken human form. The storm has broken fully now, and you find yourself standing in a world reshaped by terror. Death is no longer distant. It is everywhere. Bells toll without pause, graves fill too quickly, and families vanish from one day to the next. And in this shadow, people turn to the only places they know. Faith, ritual, and desperate attempts to understand the incomprehensible. You close your eyes and enter a small stone chapel. Candles flicker in the dim light, their wax dripping slowly onto wooden holders. The air is heavy with incense, smoke rising like fragile prayers. Men and women kneel on the cold floor, whispering psalms through trembling lips. The priest's voice trembles too, though he speaks of salvation. The church has always been the anchor of life, and so in the face of plague, it becomes the only refuge. People pray, hoping God will hear and deliver them. But the silence of heaven feels heavy, and for every prayer, another bell tolls outside. When prayers do not bring relief, people look elsewhere. Some join processions of flagellants, men who march from town to town, whipping their own backs until blood runs down, believing their suffering will cleanse the sins of the world. Crowds gather to watch them, their chants echoing in the streets, cries for mercy, cries for forgiveness. The rhythm of their whips is haunting, each strike meant to appease an angry God. For a moment, the sight brings people comfort. It feels like action, like penance. But the plague does not fade. Fear twists into suspicion. Whispers arise about those who might be to blame. Foreigners, beggars, women accused of witchcraft. Anyone different becomes a target. In some towns, Jewish communities are accused of poisoning wells, their synagogues burned, their families driven out or slaughtered. Desperation seeks an enemy, and in the void of understanding, cruelty grows. Fear is not quiet. It is loud, violent, and searching for relief, even if relief comes through blame. Yet alongside fear, there is also resilience. Doctors, limited as they are, try to help. They wear long robes and strange beaked masks filled with herbs, believing the sweet scents will protect them from poisoned air. They burn fires in the streets, thinking smoke will cleanse the atmosphere. They prescribe herbs, bleeding, or prayer. None of it works, but it is an attempt to bring order to chaos. Even in the face of futility, people reach for meaning. Imagine yourself walking through a town at dusk. The air smells of smoke and sickness. You pass a group of women lighting candles along a roadside shrine, their eyes closed in silent hope. You hear the chanting of monks in the distance, their voices low and steady, like the heartbeat of a frightened world, and you notice how faith, even when unanswered, gives shape to despair. Without it, perhaps the fear would be unbearable. Still, you feel the weight of questions pressing into your mind. If God hears, why does the plague not end? If prayer matters, why do the faithful die alongside the faithless? If punishment is the cause, what sin could possibly be so great? These questions are whispered in homes and chapels, never with certainty, always with trembling, and the lack of answers deepens the silence. As the night settles, you sense the paradox. Faith gives hope, but also deepens confusion. Fear drives cruelty, yet also binds people together in ritual. Desperation pushes humanity to its limits, sometimes toward kindness, sometimes toward violence. The plague does not only kill bodies, it tests souls. And you cannot help but wonder, lying quietly now, when darkness surrounds you, do you lean toward faith or toward fear? Which part of your heart rises strongest when the world seems lost? A wounded world endures slowly. The sickness loosens its grip. Villages half empty struggle to live again. Fields grow wild, cities shrink, and the very structure of society bends. Out of loss emerges change. Labor gains worth, old orders crack, and whispers of a new age begin. The plague does not last forever. Like a storm, it rages with terrible force, and then, slowly, it begins to loosen its grip. Death still lingers, but the pace softens. The bells toll less often. Villages that once seemed abandoned now stir faintly with life. Survivors step out into streets that feel both familiar and foreign, as if the world itself has been broken and remade. You walk through these places in your mind. In some villages, half the houses stand empty, their doors hanging open, their hearths long cold. Weeds grow tall in the cracks of stone roads. In the countryside, fields lie untended, their soil reclaiming itself, dotted with wild flowers where wheat once stood. The silence is not as heavy as before, but it carries a strange echo, a reminder of all that has been lost. Survival comes with both grief and opportunity. With so many lives gone, labor becomes rare, and for the first time in memory, common workers gain power. A peasant who once bowed low before his lord now finds his hands worth more than gold. Landowners, desperate to rebuild, must bargain with those who remain. Wages rise, feudal bonds loosen, and the old order begins to crack. From devastation, a subtle shift toward change begins. You imagine the survivors gathering in markets again. The stalls are fewer, the faces thinner, yet trade resumes. Bread is baked, wool is sold, voices rise in haggling. People look at one another with haunted eyes, yet they continue. Life, fragile and uncertain, insists on moving forward. Children still play, chasing one another through narrow lanes, though their laughter carries a note of resilience rather than innocence. The church, too, bears wounds. Its promises of protection felt hollow when priests died as swiftly as peasants. Trust has cracked, and though faith remains, it is not the same. Some people turn more devout, clinging to ritual with fierce intensity. Others step away, quietly questioning, wondering if truth lies elsewhere. Seeds of doubt are planted, seeds that, in time, will grow into questions that reshape the world. And yet, even in this scarred landscape, there is beauty. Art begins to change, touched by memory of the plague. Paintings depict skeletons dancing among the living, a reminder of how thin the line is between life and death. Stories shift, infused with sorrow, but also with a strange clarity. People see more sharply the brevity of existence, and from that awareness, new forms of expression bloom. Imagine yourself in a village at dusk, years after the worst has passed. The air smells of fresh bread again. A farmer calls his oxen home. Children sit by the fire, listening to stories told by a grandmother whose voice trembles but endures. The memory of the plague is still near, like a scar that aches when touched, but the pulse of life has returned. The world, though wounded, has not vanished. You breathe in this paradox: loss and renewal, death and transformation. Humanity has endured, though forever changed. What once seemed unshakable, the order of lords and peasants, the certainty of the church, the rhythms of daily life, has cracked open. Out of the wounds, something new begins to stir, and you cannot help but wonder, when a world survives great suffering, is it still the same world, or is it reborn into something entirely new? Echoes in the night. The plague fades, but its memory clings like shadow. You close your eyes and feel how fragile life truly is, yet also how resilient hearts can be. In the quiet, you wonder, what lessons do we carry forward, and which do we forget? The plague loosens its grip, and yet its shadow remains. You close your eyes and feel how memories linger even when the storm has passed. The survivors carry stories etched into their bones, stories of loss, of silence, of fear, and of endurance. The world moves forward, but it does not forget. You walk once more through a village at night. The air is cool, the stars steady above, and the streets are quiet. But the quiet is not the same as before. Once, silence meant peace. Now it carries the memory of empty houses and tolling bells. Each corner, each stone, each worn path whispers of those who did not return. The world feels heavier, as though grief itself has become part of the soil. Still, humanity rebuilds. Fields are tilled again, towns reopen, markets hum with cautious energy. The cycle of planting and harvesting continues, as it always has. Children are born who will never know the worst days, though they will hear the stories. Families speak of the plague in hushed voices, as if naming it might call it back. And yet, by remembering, they give meaning to survival. Art and thought change in its wake. Painters create scenes of the dance macabre, skeletal figures leading peasants, nobles, even kings in a universal dance of death. The message is clear. Life is fragile, equal in its end. Writers capture the darkness and the lessons learned, stories of fear and resilience that echo across generations. The plague becomes more than an event. It becomes a mirror, reflecting how vulnerable yet persistent humanity is. Faith, too, carries the echo. Some hearts remain devoted, clinging to God with renewed intensity. Others step away, their trust shaken by silence in the face of suffering. Questions grow about the church, about medicine, about the world itself. Seeds of curiosity take root, seeds that will one day bloom into new ways of thinking, into the Renaissance, into the reshaping of Europe's soul. The plague is not only an end, it is also a beginning. You pause in the stillness and reflect. Every life lost was a story untold, yet every survivor carried the weight of remembering. Out of tragedy came change. Societies shifted, hierarchies cracked, voices once silent began to rise. The world that emerged was scarred, but it was also more awake to the truth that nothing is permanent, and that fragility can give birth to transformation. Imagine yourself lying in bed centuries later, hearing the faint echo of those days. The fear is gone, but the lessons remain. Life is fragile. Communities are bound together by threads invisible but strong. Hope persists even in the darkest hours, and the human heart, though wounded, learns to endure. As you drift towards sleep, you sense how the echoes of the Black Plague are not just history. They are reminders that loss and resilience walk hand in hand. The night grows quiet, the stars remain, and your breath steadies. In that stillness, you wonder softly, what echoes will our own time leave behind, and will those who come after remember them with fear or with hope? The question lingers gently, not demanding an answer, but inviting reflection. And with that thought, you rest, carried by the hush of history into the tender silence of night. The silence after the storm. The story of the Black Plague does not end with statistics or with dates on a page. It ends instead in silence, the silence of a world learning how to live again. You feel that silence now, like the hush that follows a storm when the air is clean, heavy, and still. The plague was not only an ending, it was also a turning. From the ruins of villages and the grief of countless families, change slowly unfolded. Society shifted, labor gained new value, and the rigid structures of feudal life began to bend. Out of sorrow came questions about God, about medicine, about the nature of life itself. Those questions planted seeds, and in time, those seeds grew into new ways of thinking. From tragedy, the Renaissance would bloom. Yet for those who lived it, the greatest legacy was not change, but memory. They carried the absence of loved ones, the weight of vanished neighbors, the memory of bells tolling endlessly. They told their children, and their children told theirs, until the memory became history. And even now, as you rest centuries later, you can feel the echo of their voices. carried across time. You breathe into that echo. It whispers a truth both fragile and comforting, that life is uncertain, but also enduring. That even in the face of death, the human heart continues to seek meaning, connection, and hope. The Black Plague was a wound that scarred the world, but it also revealed the strength hidden in survival. As you let your body sink deeper into rest, imagine the stars above medieval Europe, unchanged, steady, watching as the world below trembled. Those same stars shine above you now, centuries later. The plague has passed, but the lessons remain. Life is brief, love matters. Communities are fragile yet resilient, and history, though heavy, carries wisdom for those who listen. The silence after the storm is not empty. It is filled with memory, with reflection, and with the quiet promise that dawn always follows the longest night. And so, you let go. The story has ended, the echoes grow faint, and you are safe within the hush of the present moment. The past has spoken softly, and now the night welcomes you into sleep.